So welcome to Thursday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm Yeka, and this month in April we're doing something a little bit different. We have a collection of topics, and each week each host will choose what topic she or he will be covering. I read through the different topics that we have, and there were a couple of them that really stood out to me. And the one that I'm going to cover first is the one that actually had a little bit of emotional charge for me, which is cultural appropriation. And next week I'll probably talk about superheroes or such, because I'm a nerd. And you guys should all be pumped up having seen Captain America, which is coming out. So, one of my favorites, by the way. But let me go ahead and read the topic, and it's going to be posted below. We actually, this one, two different people asked very similar topics. So the first one comes from TheRitzyMuffin, and they write, not sure if anyone asked this, but what are your thoughts on cultural appropriation? It seems to be a term that's thrown about whenever I see people talking about anything eclectic. I can see both sides, and I'm still not entirely sure where I stand on the whole thing. And then we also have one from, I think, Hercules1, and they write, I am curious to hear your thoughts and opinions on cultural appropriation, particularly within the pagan community. So, to TheRitzyMuffin, I'm also have some mixed feelings on this, and I'm not always sure where to stand. I think it is a very, very sensitive topic. I want to start by saying that the part of the world I'm from northern New Mexico, and so it's something that I've heard about my whole life, being as we have several different groups of people here with, their unique cultures, and our city is a tourist city, and our economy is very heavily based on tourism. I don't think that's maybe the best strategy, but that's a very different topic. But anyways, it's something that gets talked about a lot, and I wanted to start by making some distinctions here. Both of these topics ask about cultural appropriation, and I think that what they're really trying to get at is cultural misappropriation. So to start, cultural appropriation is something that happens all the time. It's one of the many ways, but a major way, that cultures grow and change. It's an exchange between them. Now, cultural misappropriation, you could call it a form of cultural appropriation, but the real distinction there is that it's disrespectful. It is done in a way that steals or is not respectful or mindful of the culture from which the, I don't know what you'd even call cultural material, cultural aspects are being taken. So the problem with cultural misappropriation is trying to figure out what is disrespectful. And that's really going to depend on the individual situation and on the particular cultures involved, because you have not only the context of the culture from which this thing is being taken, these aspects are being borrowed or used, but also the context of the culture which is appropriating it, and of course the individuals involved, and then the very specifics of whatever the particular aspect is which is being used. I think that my kind of general impression and belief about people is that we really try and be good people. Our idea of what good is of course different between different people, but generally we don't try and be really shitty. Generally we don't try and go out of our way to hurt other people or to oppress them. Now of course there have been some periods in history which that has happened, and periods in which that does happen, but I think overall, I don't think we really try and do that. And particularly in the pagan community, when it happens, I think it happens more out of ignorance, if you will, than it does out of any sense of than people trying to be malicious. But it still is very tricky to decide when is it misappropriation and when is it just an expansion and sharing and when is it a positive thing. And I can't just give a blanket answer to that. I have kind of senses and feelings about it, and it's something that personally I have very strong feelings about, so I might be a little bit more sensitive than somebody else to it. But when I see sort of the typical, I'm gonna look through a list of gods and goddesses and pick the one I want and use that name, and to me that really borders on being kind of disrespectful, because it's taking those gods and goddesses out of the context of the cultures that created them, and it isn't always acknowledging and respecting those cultures. If somebody is doing that in a way that they feel is that is acknowledging it, well, that's a different story. But we also end up getting into an issue of, does one group's behavior and activity towards a particular thing legitimately degrade it for someone else? For instance, taking a status symbol of something that in some traditions you have to earn and work really hard for, and it's a symbol that they use to say, look at this work that has been done and we should respect. And if another group takes that symbol and just starts using it and it becomes associated with the second group, the first group has kind of lost something, and that's where it gets really tricky. So I guess this week I really don't have a concrete answer other than to say that I believe the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural misappropriation is respect. And sometimes ignorance can be disrespectful. So once again, I guess this is a pretty common theme for me. I think it's important that we be mindful and just try and do the best we can, and look at ourselves and look at how we are behaving, how we are impacting ourselves and the world, and trying to be honest with ourselves, looking at that and continually reevaluating that with the rest of the world. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it this week. I'm really interested. I haven't watched any of the other host videos yet, so I'll probably be doing that while this video is uploading. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. So take care and have a wonderful week.